everybody. Welcome back to the Sunday Matinee. It is episode 30. That's right. We have now a month's worth of episodes, and I think that's super duper awesome. Tonight, we are going to go back to a sort of more general topic, which is nice. We've been covering a lot of Marvel and Godzilla stuff the last, 2 months, So it's cool to get back to those sort of general movie discussions. So I'm your host, Ben Stahl, and with me tonight are Sarah Moore. Welcome back, Sarah. You are building back up your streak of consecutive episodes, and just now that Godzilla's done, you can be a regular again. And returning for his first episode since the big Godzilla marathon is Travis Martinez. Travis, I'm so happy that you're here tonight to discuss something that is not Godzilla or King Kong.
But happy to be back. A topic I can actually talk very well about.
So, this is episode 30, and we're going to be talking about adaptations, sort of spinning off of a conversation that I had a while back, way back in 2020 with Sarah and Dea. What was I going to say? I guess first we have some news. Got some news this week. So the Oscars happened last week, and let's just leave it at that. They happened. It was a thing. I think the discourse has already worn itself out regarding how well that went. But after the Oscars, Anthony Hopkins was not there to accept his Best Leading Actor Performance award. So he posted his acceptance speech on Instagram, and he paid tribute to Chadwick Boseman. It's a very short little video, but it's very nice. And on top of that, too, Chadwick Boseman's family has actually stated that they do not feel like he was snubbed. They actually said that Anthony Hopkins deserved that win. And basically it's because if you're nominated, you deserve to be there and you deserve to win. And I actually agree with that in almost every case, except for the year that Suicide Squad won Best Hair and Makeup, because Suicide Squad should never have won anything. But that's beside the point. But I thought it was a very nice little tribute. And, Anthony Hopkins is just such a wonderful person.
He's a class act.
And it's also his second Oscar, and his first since Silence of the Lambs, which is 30 years ago. Silence of the Lambs was 30 years ago. Now I feel old. What else happened this week? The Game of Thrones prequel show, The House of the Dragon, has officially begun production. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out, given how the main series ended and how fans have kind of tried to forget about the show. That there's an I didn't say we could talk about television adaptations, but if Game of Thrones is something that comes up tonight, that's honestly fair game. That's something we can talk about. So who's excited for House of the Dragon? Let's be real. Who's
I'm intrigued. I'll give it a chance. But I wouldn't say I didn't passionately hate the end of Game of Thrones as much as some people. I mean, I definitely think it was rushed. And I think there were a few character storylines they kind of didn't bother to do anything that made sense with. But overall, I think the main arc worked for me. I like the Daenerys part. I bought that. I mean, I don't think they built upon it well, but I think that was George R. R. Martin's intended ending.
Well, we'll find out one day if those last few books are ever finished. Yeah. So in Netflix news, Guillermo del Toro has revealed there is a final season of Troll Hunters coming up, which is great. I haven't watched Troll Hunters, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. And of course, we'll always talk about Guillermo del Toro on the show because he is so brilliant. So anyone out there who has checked out Troll Hunters, let us know what you think, because maybe it's something I can dive into this week and talk about on next week's episode or whenever we get back to it. Also in television, speaking of shows that have had historically not great endings, the Dexter revival got its first sneak peek this last week. It really was just a 30-second teaser with Michael C. Hall in a cabin in the woods, and he's looking out the window, and you can see the reflection of course, of someone he's got tied up to the table. It looks very much like Dexter. I only saw the first 4 seasons, and have been told that I don't need to move forward from that.
That ending was terrible.
Travis, are you a Dexter fan?
Haven't seen anything about it. Like a lot of shows, like even Game of Thrones, like I always find out about it halfway through its popularity. And I'm a person who likes to watch things from the beginning and watch it from there, because I don't like to watch episodes halfway through. And then like finding the episodes, first of all, is always a hassle, whether it's buying DVDs or like scrolling through Hulu, Netflix, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, whatever, just to find a show is always like a hassle. And
it's always easier to watch from the beginning.
Yeah. And like it's so much work, and when you know like the ending's bad, it's just like, do you want to sit through the whole series just to see if they're right? And do you really want to get disappointed with everybody else? But since it's coming back, I might check it out.
I would definitely recommend watching the first 4 seasons at least, because everyone seems to think that the first 4 are solid, and I would agree. And
yeah, it was a good
like
show.
The 4th season ended in a way that you could kind of call that an ending to the show. You know, but I think the ending of season 4 has enough of a period to it that you could stop there if you're not too eager to catch what many people think are a worse back half. Speaking of, again, we're talking about a lot of TV shows in the news this week. Here's a show, Travis, that I'm sure you're going to be watching from the beginning because it's a Marvel show. Miss Marvel. There were some set photos that leaked on the internet this week, and we got our first look at Iman Vellani in costume as Miss Marvel, and it looks like it's right out of the comic books, which is really cool. I'm really looking forward to this one. Every time we talk about Marvel in the past couple episodes, like with the WandaVision and Falcon spoiler cast, I keep forgetting that this is a show that's also supposed to be coming out this year. And we're getting a whole new character, which is great. Yeah. And the character who is supposed to end up in Captain Marvel 2.
I'm interested in how they're introducing a lot of younger people as like the next set of Avengers. Like I know the Hawkeye series is going to be about him passing the bow and arrow to his daughter, and there's this, and I think there's an Ironheart show which is supposed to follow, though I forget the character's name, but like she's a young female African American who eventually becomes Iron Man. So I'm also very interested. And yes, the photos, like I'm not surprised how accurate they are to the comic books. Marvel has done a really good job at like adapting their characters, like Doctor Strange, Black Panthers, like characters you never thought you could see done live action, but Marvel did. Which is why I'm looking forward to when they finally bring in the X-Men, because I want the blue and yellow spandex for Wolverine.
Yeah, I don't know if I want the blue and yellow, but I wouldn't mind having the yellow and brown one. Any one of his actual
yellow and brown one could be good too. But knowing Marvel, I think they're going to save a lot of the big characters like Wolverine for later. Like they want to maybe introduce some smaller C-list X-Men and make them household names like they did with Ant-Man, or like all the characters before they had like the Fantastic Four and X-Men and Spider-Man.
I hope they do, because we talked about on the Falcon and Winter Soldier episode last week. I talked about if they do X-Men again, they really need to focus on those characters that they either haven't used yet in films, or that they tragically were underused in the live action movies, like all those characters who appeared in Days of Future Past who like do nothing. It's like you got so many cool characters. You got Blink. I can't remember who else is in it, but I remember Blink was there. It's like, yep.
And the guy, I forget his name, Bishop, I think it was. Like he was the main.
Bishop.
He was the main guy in the comic book storyline for Days of Future Past, but then they made it Wolverine because like. Now I love Wolverine. I love Hugh Jackman as a character, but like. They should have put him off on the side a little bit and Just focus on some of the other side characters. Like I think Jubilee appears like 3 or 4 times in the franchise, played by different actresses every time. Like
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like even Cyclops got the short staff. Like let's keep. That's also what I'm hoping for the new X-Men films. Retire Wolverine for a bit. Maybe not introduce him right away. Let the character stay in retirement and focus on other characters. That's my hope.
Well, whatever they do, I'm sure it's going to be good. They just have one of the best track records in cinema right now.
Yep.
So moving on, more TV stuff. Donald Glover has said that Atlanta season 3 will probably be out by early 2022. This is another show that I need to get into. It's all on Hulu. It's only 2 seasons so far, and who doesn't love Donald Glover? Honestly. I've needed to jump into it for a long time, so I should do that before 2022, before season 3, before Donald Glover ends up becoming a Marvel superhero as well, and then everyone really knows him. And hey, speaking of Marvel, here we go again. Morbius has been delayed again. Goodness knows how many times it's been delayed, but this time it's only been delayed 1 week. From January 21st to January 28th. So dramatic.
Just want to keep us on our toes. Like,
I really don't know what's going on over there with Sony, and they seem to be delaying their films more than anyone else. So
I wonder if something else like big is set to come out on the 21st or something, and they didn't want to compete.
That always seems to be it too. Is like, yeah, a new movie will announce it's planting its flag, and they're like, "Oh crap!
No, we don't want to go up against that one."
I know there's a lot going on with the Sony Marvel movies. I think there's I've been saying, there's something going on like with the deal between Marvel and Disney right now, since their whole argument. What was it, last year or the year before, or whatever? When we almost lost Spider-Man. I can't remember, but because I even heard Venom and Morbius will also come to Disney Plus, as part of their new deals and arrangements.
Yeah, it's so weird because it sounded for a long time that even after they re-upped that deal to keep Spider-Man in the MCU for another extra movie or two, that they were going to keep going ahead with all this other stuff and bring Tom Holland out into that. And it's I really don't know, but I really hope that they keep integrating, because I want Tom Holland to stick around for as long as they can.
I would too, but I also find it funny, shortly after that whole disagreement, they kind of rushed the new Spider-Man movie because it wasn't initially part of their announcement slate, which kind of makes me think, all right, is the next Spider-Man going to be their final deal and they're going to call it quits so they can conclude the story or whatever? So I'm hoping not, but just how things are, I'm looking at that as a possibility.
Well, the problem with that too is Spider-Man couldn't be part of Marvel's slate of announcements because it's still technically Sony's film, so Sony gets to choose when they announce that stuff. So it still feels like they're pushing Spider-Man faster than other characters, but it's the same director, so. And they've got Doctor Strange. They've got a lot of stuff going on. They've got Doc Ock. So I trust it's going to be big and fun. Probably.
Yeah, it's Captain America Civil War was Avengers 2.5. With all the characters, it's Captain America was Avengers 2.5. I think this Spider-Man's going to be Avengers 4.5 with all the characters that show up.
Yep. And I was right a couple months ago, and I was like, what if this makes Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy canon? It is now, and that cracks me up, because it officially means that Spider-Man 3 is the worst film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it's as bad. It's not good. All right, final bit of news for the week, and I forgot to put this down in the itinerary, but it's pretty simple stuff. Robert Kirkman's Invincible has been renewed for 2 more seasons at Amazon. Good for them. I've heard it is another crazy, violent comic book adaptation that I haven't gotten into yet. I haven't watched that. I haven't watched The Boys. I'm so behind on all the things. But everyone's saying Invincible is a fun watch, so I'll have to add it to the list of so many things to watch.
There's just a lot of stuff. There's like so many things.
That's why I just prefer movies at this point. You sit down, watch 2 hours, whereas a TV show is just like you gotta dedicate so much time and like, all right, every Friday gotta get ready to watch the next part of this, and then it's just like, just let me sit down and watch the movie or something.
It's like all of these studios and streaming services caught on that so many of us are staying home and not going out and socializing and need something to do. Ugh.
Well,
all right.
They got to make their money somehow.
All right. That is the news for the week. And here we are talking again about adaptations. So quick review. What is an adaptation? For the purposes of this show, an adaptation is going to be a film that directly is inspired or adapted from a previous work, whether it be a book or a stage play or what else is there? I don't know. Who knows? A piece of art, a piece of visual art could be.
Video game, movie, TV,
yeah, a video game, actually. That's a good one. For the purposes of this conversation, I would not like to focus on movies that are direct remakes of movies that were like movies to begin with. So like, what was it? Rob Zombie's Halloween was like a remake of Halloween. Like the Notorious Psycho remake. Yeah, for this purpose, I want to talk about films that are inspired by books or stuff that's not a movie. Because otherwise I just consider it a remake. So what we're going to do is I asked everyone to pick 3 different adaptations, and we're going to take turns arguing how that adaptation has eclipsed its source material in the eyes of the world, even if it has. And I guarantee, knowing these two, we have probably picked between the 3 of us 9 things that have eclipsed their original source material in some way. I'll kick it off. Number 1. So first off, Sarah and Travis, raise your hand if you even knew this was a book to begin with. Jaws. Okay, yep.
I didn't.
My dad loves
Jaws.
it.
It is a book. And I have read the book, and I can honestly say I know exactly why this movie has eclipsed the book in terms of popularity and visibility. The book is fine. You know, Sarah, obviously your dad saw something amazing in it that I did not, but it's not that there's like a lack of shark in the book. There's just as much shark in the book as there is in the movie. But my goodness, all the characters in the book are like written to be absolutely unlikable. They're all terrible people. And I cannot imagine Richard Dreyfuss playing a terrible, well, he probably has, but I cannot imagine 1970s Richard Dreyfuss playing an unlikable character. But what is it about Jaws, the movie? Have either of you seen Jaws?
Oh, I've seen it, yeah, for sure.
I think I've seen bits of it. I don't know that I've actually ever seen it from beginning to end. I feel like I've seen a lot of different clips of it. And when I was a kid, I used to read through the book because I felt like it was a, grown-up forbidden book.
So I picked Jaws because, one, a lot of people really don't know that it was a book. And what does the movie add to it that the book didn't? Number 1, it's John Williams' score. Everyone knows the score to Jaws. It's very simple, but but it sticks with you. And every time you hear that score, you think of sharks. Da dun da dun da dun da dun da dun. That is probably the number 1 thing. Because when you're reading a book, at least when I'm reading a book, I don't have like a score going on in my head. I don't hear music when I'm reading unless I'm listening to it. But my brain just doesn't produce music as I'm reading a work of fiction. I think that's something that film in general brings, but especially a film like Jaws, which brings, that kind of score that is absolutely, even if someone Sarah, for instance, who has not seen Jaws all the way through, everyone knows the theme to Jaws. Everyone knows that that is a shark. You hear that and you look around for the shark. It's been parodied enough. So score is one thing I think that elevates Jaws the film over the book. Number two is back in 1975. This is pre-Star Wars. This is pre-CG. In 1975, to make people in a movie theater believe that there was a massive 25-foot shark terrorizing this little island community and eating people was an incredible feat. Yes, nowadays, 46 years later, we can look at some of the effects and say, okay, I can see, how they pulled that off, or yeah, that looks a little fake. But honestly, the effects have held up pretty well, especially when you compare it to the three sequels, which are not nearly as good. Or if you look at shark movies today, in which the sharks are all, most of the time, they're going to be using CGI sharks, and CGI sharks are almost always obviously CGI sharks. They just haven't figured out a way to make CGI sharks look quite as real yet. So would anyone argue that I don't think we can argue that the book is more popular or more well known than the movie at this point. No arguments.
No, yeah, that movie's definitely more well known, and it's even a fun part of the Universal Studios tram tour.
Yeah. And it shows up it shows up all the time in other films. Like it shows up as a gag in the second Back to the Future film. I think the opening to Airplane, the parody film Airplane, is a Jaws joke. So yeah, it pops up. It's in Clerks. Salsa Shark. So yeah.
It's even referenced in a lot of children's movies. Like Jaws is not really, you would say, a children's movie because it's horror adjacent, but like first one that comes to my mind is like the cinematic masterpiece Shark Tale with Will Smith. They even referenced this theme. It's like the sharks are going dun 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 dun, and I was like, stop! It's like that's our theme song.
Well, yeah, because you've got to do that to give all the adults who are suffering in the theater through that a frame of reference and something to laugh at that the kids are going to be like, huh?
Yeah.
Or maybe one day the kids will grow up and watch Jaws and be like, oh, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
I get that joke that my parents thought was hysterical.
I understood that reference.
Uh-huh. We understood that reference. Sarah, what is your first pick?
I'll go ahead and throw one out here that I bet also a lot of people don't know has a source book. So you guys can raise your hands if you knew this movie was based on a book. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I think I heard that, but I can't really honestly say that I full on knew that. I'm in the same boat as Travis. Like I think it's something I catch during the credits when I watch it. But like if I were just to think of films that were based on books, I would not think of Roger Rabbit. So yeah, I'd say awareness is 40 to 50% for me.
Yeah, I actually didn't. It wasn't that long ago that I found out it was based on a book. So I think I rewatched it a few years ago out of curiosity, and that movie holds up like really well. I still enjoy it just as much as I did when I first saw it in the theater when I was like a kid. But anyway, I found out it was based on a book, so I was like, ooh, I want to read that book. I'm curious. And the book is actually called Who Censored Roger Rabbit? And I believe it has a sequel, and there might even be a couple sequels. I can't, because I only read the first one because I didn't really have a lot of desire to read on. I mean, it was interesting, but it was definitely not like, it's kind of more of like a satire. It's written more of like a satire of like detective noir type stories. But it's definitely a lot more adult, I would say, than the movie was. But also just not quite as fun. And it just, compared to the movie, the book is a little flat. It's just not. It doesn't have it doesn't have like the Disney angle, of course. And yeah, it's just the storyline. It's not quite as interesting. Roger Rabbit, I would say, is not as likable in the book. So yeah, but so they definitely took that book, and it's funny because you always hear like, oh, the book's better than the movie. The book's but that is definitely a case where the movie is way more engaging and entertaining than the book is.
Well, and you brought up one point. You've got the Disney angle going there. There are so many Disney characters that they were able to throw into there, as well as Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you see characters you never in a million years would see interacting with each other in a movie, whereas a book, it's like, all right, you're just reading about Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny interacting, but you don't get the same impact as them sharing frames of a movie together. So I think that's another reason why it might have eclipsed. It's like you get to visually see all of it.
Plus, special effects wise, that movie took that sort of live action animation hybrid. It fast forwarded it so many years, because really Mary Poppins was like one of the only, Mary Poppins and a handful of other films in the 60s were like the only films that had really done that. At least well-known movies. Roger Rabbit really took it to the extreme.
And,
yeah.
And Bob Hoskins, like, I'll admit, like, that guy knows how to pantomime. Like, you don't really see an actor interacting with a blank space. Like, when he's talking to Jessica Rabbit or Roger Rabbit or whoever, you genuinely think like he's talking to them, even though one's 2D and one's real life.
Yeah, his performance is pretty amazing and entertaining in that movie.
I think it's on like one of the DVD bonus features. They talk about how working with the human actors could also be frustrating at times, because like in moments where like Bob Hoskins is supposed to be strangling Roger, they'd say like, if he didn't close his fingers up like this, they want him to do that. But if he grabbed him like this, it'd be like, that was worse, because then you have to animate like the fur between his fingers. It's like, man, the attention to detail that they got into in that's something special. Yeah, that's not only, Sarah, you picked not only a good movie that I keep forgetting as a book, but just a great example of cinema in general.
Two
excellent choices. I'd say we've got two great films so far. Travis, what is your first film for us?
There's a couple films that always came to mind, but I wanted to save like the bigger ones for later, so I had to really think about my first choice. For some reason, what's funny is the first film that I would have thought of was To Kill a Mockingbird, but then I thought, no, the book and the movie aren't equal terms. So my first film, and I think everybody knows it's a book, that I would say is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Because like growing up, like I didn't even know there was a book, but at the same time I was a kid and all that. And I think the reason I feel like it eclipses like the book is because like you get to visually see like everything, and Gene Wilder's performance and all the stuff he added into it, like it just takes you back to a sense of childhood and all that. And it's like, I feel like it does a really good job at like capturing a child's feeling in a brand new world.
I would agree that I do think there's I would say there's still about the same amount of awareness, but man, there's something about that movie, and Gene Wilder in particular, that makes it so enjoyable. And it's been so long since I've read the book, but the movie also adds some really dark themes that I don't recall from the book. Particularly the famous the tunnel in the boat. So
I mean, and I do think like one of the biggest things was like Gene Wilder's performance. Like I know a lot of people are just like it's not exactly a great adaptation of his character. Some people even argue that Johnny Depp's was closer to the book. But I think that's also why the film stands on its own and why it helps separates is like Gene Wilder added so much to it that helped stick in your mind, like the infamous scene where he limps out of the factory and then does a somersault. And that was all his idea too, because they're like, why do you want to do that? And he's just like, so that way for the rest of the film, you never know if he's telling the truth or if he's lying. Just and little moments like that, I feel like really help cements the film.
Yeah, it is a Gene Wilder showcase through and through. Um, Sarah, I seem to recall we've talked about Willy Wonka before, and I don't think you've seen it, right?
No, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've definitely. I mean, I think we watched it several times when I was in school. Like that was a popular movie to watch on movie days in school. But I also had Disney Channel as a kid, so it was on there a lot. I've definitely many times. And I was just thinking as he was saying that I feel like a lot of times when a movie ends up eclipsing a book, I feel like a big part of that is often like the characters who are kind of more flat in a book, and then they get played by an amazing actor that brings them to life. I feel like that's kind of part of the case with Roger Rabbit too. I feel like Bob Hoskins' performance really like makes that movie, and all the voice actors of the animated characters. And I feel like that's quite often when a movie eclipses a book, a lot of it has to do with like the actors.
I mean, that's something I wanted to bring up with both Jaws and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but it's like I feel like that was just like such a broad statement that applied to every one of these type of things. That's just like, all right, I'm gonna say this, be a broken record, and say that every single time. It's like an actor's performance really helps it out. Because when you're reading a book, it's just like you may picture something in your head, but to like see an actor like really delve deep into a character, like what's the character's name from Jaws who was like talking, who wanted to hunt the shark? He's like, his eyes.
Geez, it's one of my favorite movies of all. Quint.
Quint. I think that's a really good example of like an actor really like cementing a character as his own, like, and now to the point where I don't think if anybody reads the book or if they were ever to try to remake it, which I hope they never do, it'd be hard to recreate it.
That's Robert Shaw as Quint, and he actually, for his big speech, he rewrote a lot of that dialogue himself, and so yeah, it really kind of was him. And you're right, this is something that we'll just talk about it now really quick. Once you've seen a movie and then you go back to read the books, it is very hard to not see the actors in that character, unless it was a particularly bad film that you don't like and you were actively trying to block it out. But yeah, I have a difficult time going back to reading Jaws and not seeing Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss. I don't remember, because I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory before I saw the movie, so I haven't read it since. But if I go back now, it would be hard not to picture Gene Wilder. Because I haven't watched the Johnny Depp one all the way through, I can easily put Gene Wilder ahead.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened to me in high school. Like, while I haven't seen the movies, I knew about the Hunger Games. So when I decided to read the book, all I pictured was like Jennifer Lawrence and Woody Harrelson and a few characters that I didn't know. Like, I just pictured whatever. But like, yeah, it was just hard not to see Jennifer Lawrence and Woody Harrelson and what's her name? I can't remember. It's Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, it's something that's going to come up a lot in these conversations. I'm going to jump in with my number 2, and I'm actually going to skip over to my number 3 because I think my number 2 is cooler. So my new number 2 is Planet of the Apes. Raise your hand if you knew that was a book.
Did not know that was a book.
Yeah. And I'm talking about the original 1968 film. I'm not talking about the Tim Burton film, which is actually closer to the book than the 1968 film. And the reason I picked the 1968 film, I'd say it definitely eclipses the book because does everyone know how the movie, Travis, does everyone know how the movie ends?
I know how it ends.
If
I
you
know how
don't
it ends
know how,
I
a
knew
lot of
how it
people
ended
did.
before I even read it.
I will say right now, if you've not seen the original Planet of the Apes film and don't want it spoiled because it's something that's on your list, this is the part where you phase out of the video because this it really is one of the coolest endings ever. Um, you know, he thinks he was on a new planet and it was just Earth, as they say on The Simpsons. It was Earth all along. And you see the the decaying Statue of Liberty.
Mhm.
And what an ending. But that's not how the book ends. In the book, he's just on a planet full of apes. And I think he makes it back to Earth in the book. I think the ending that they used in Tim Burton's is is the one from the book. He goes back to Earth, and then Earth has been taken over by apes.
Hmm.
But again, why is this film eclipse the book? One, because I think the ending is better. I've read the book, the ending's better in the movie. Two, the makeup in 1968 was, so far ahead of what everyone else was doing. At this point we had Star Trek, we had a couple like science fiction had special effects were still a little bit primitive. And makeup was still a little bit primitive. We were not quite to, again, we're 9 years before Star Wars. And even the stuff in Star Wars, occasionally, some of the masks and makeup in the original film are a little cheap. But what they did in Planet of the Apes with the main ape characters, at the very least, was absolutely phenomenal. And that film did get an honorary Oscar for its makeup effects because back then there wasn't an Oscar for that kind of thing. And yeah, it got its own series. We got 4 more films in that series after that. Then they tried it again in 2001 and it bombed. And I'm glad that didn't pick up. But it's never picked up as a series of books, but it has picked up as a series of movies. And they did it again. They just had a new trilogy that started 10 years ago, and the new trilogy was also very good. One of the better sci-fi trilogies of the last decade. And they teased in that they actually teased in the first film in that trilogy that it might actually tie into the original 68 film, which is cool.
That was a really cool Easter egg I noticed too.
So go ahead, Travis.
I totally have to agree with you. Like, just like that film was just like a groundbreaking, like in the. I wouldn't probably put it up there with King Kong with its effects, but it definitely was groundbreaking in its cinema history. Like, you probably know this fact or not, but did they dub over the actors after they filmed on set, or did they actually speak on set?
I don't know that actually. That's good.
Because looking at the makeup and all that, it looks, because even in the Tim Burton film, like, they obviously didn't dub and they were struggling to speak through the makeup. And that was done by Rick Baker, the master of makeup and effects and all that. So I'm assuming like the 60s, like, it would have been super difficult, but you still hear them clearly. So if it's not dubbed, that's amazing too, right there. Plus, just like the amazing social commentary on the film has, and like you said, that ending, which I think they kept hidden from the entire cast and crew, except for the people who had to film the scene, obviously. So even when they went to go see the film, they were shocked by the ending, which was really cool.
Well, they didn't have internet back then to spoil it.
Yeah.
I would say it's an ending that's on par with Empire Strikes Back in terms of just the sheer shock at the time. So yeah, Planet of the Apes, and also as Travis was saying, just a landmark film, a landmark science fiction film from its time. I wouldn't particularly say that it's. I definitely saw the movie before I read the book, but I don't remember if when I read the book I pictured Charlton Heston. I don't know.
This actually just reminded me of a behind the scenes story. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but what's his name? Was it Roddy McDowall who played the main ape Caesar? I think I
Not
heard
Caesar in the first film.
Oh no, that wasn't Caesar. It was like Cornelius.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. I actually remember funny behind the scenes stories where it's just like he got so tired of sitting in the makeup chair after work that he would just rip the makeup off at the end of each day. No, wait. First, he would just drive home in his makeup to freak out his neighbors. And then when that stopped being fun, then he would just rip the makeup off his bare hands.
Yeah. Good old makeup back in the day. I don't know how much easier it is now, but back in the day it must have been a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Sarah, what is your next film to discuss?
My next one, I suppose, could probably be argued by some whether people think the movie or I know there's still some people that think this is like a really great book, but I feel like that was probably more when the movie came out. I don't know if a lot of people now like read this book, but the movie is Jurassic Park.
Oh, so good.
And to be fair, I read the book when the movie first came out, so I was probably like 11 or 12, so it might have been over my head at that point. But I like loved. I mean, that movie scared the crap out of me when I saw it, but I loved it. I think we went back and saw it like so many times in the theater. And then I read the book, and I was just like, "What is this?" There's just so much like science, which is cool if you're into science, but definitely like that's probably not everyone's cup of tea to read pages and pages about like DNA theory and stuff. But yeah, I would say, but just the fact that movie, has been rebooted as like a new franchise and stuff, like I would say it's definitely eclipsed its source material, because at the time I think the book was pretty popular when the first movie came out, and there was probably a lot of people that liked the book better, but I don't know of a lot of people that are reading the book still. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a buzzy book anymore or considered like a classic, so.
Yeah, something that we have to consider when it comes to books in particular is the context of time. One of the reasons that I would say that Jaws and Planet of the Apes, the films, have eclipsed the book is just because I'm sure that Jaws was a popular book back in the 70s, and Planet of the Apes was a popular book back in the 60s. But, films are just more easily accessible, period. So the longer we go, I'm sure Jurassic Park is going to fall into that same category of, it's only been 30. Oh my God, again, it's been 30 years.
Yeah,
we're
closing
it
out like
93
or 93, I think. Yeah, the movie.
So in about another 20 years, it'll I'd say the movie will even have more definitively eclipsed the book for sure. And it's a great pick because again, it's a film that pioneers some great special effects and had some memorable, iconic performances. One of Jeff Goldblum's most memorable characters of all time.
It's like the maker of the Jeff Goldblum memes.
Yeah.
And not even to mention like Richard Attenborough's performance as like Dr. What was it, Hammond?
Yeah.
Richard John Hammond. Yeah, that's what it was.
And one of Sam Jackson's early movies.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I always forget he's in there. Not gonna lie, like I'm gonna say like not my favorite Sam Jackson performance. This is like if you don't have him cursing or being a badass, it's just like it's hard to remember him for me.
Although he was still pretty sassy.
He was, yes.
He was a sassy computer dude.
And just for fun, they had Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's a great cast, and the second Steven Spielberg film we actually have talked about already.
And
and
I think the first one was actually so popular that it's what made the author of the book write a second one. Michael Crichton, yeah. It made him have to write a second book, but they had to rush the film that they didn't barely use anything in the second book for the second movie.
Oh, that second film was so bad.
I enjoy it.
The second film.
The
Honestly,
second
I
film
felt-
is definitely. Go ahead, Travis.
It's definitely, I agree, like a slower film. The characters aren't as memorable, but like, I feel like the dinosaur parts are always so nice. It's nice seeing like the T-Rexes, especially with the baby Rex. Probably has the most iconic death scene for me, where the two T-Rexes split a human in part like a wishbone. And there's actually so many deleted scenes where it's just like, I follow a Jurassic Park website that goes over a bunch of behind the scenes stuff about that movie. If they included a lot of deleted scenes, especially with the hunter guy, I forget the character's name.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, if they included so many more scenes of him, and then it would have been better. And also, like, what was I gonna say? Steven Spielberg intentionally changed the ending where they go to the city at the end because, like, he wanted the T-Rex to come to mainland in the third film, but then Godzilla was coming out, and he wanted to be there first, so he rushed it.
I felt like that makes sense, because I felt like that part didn't fit with the rest of the movie.
Yeah, he was just like, all right, they're coming with the Godzilla movie, they're gonna think we're ripping them off. Let's be the first one to have a dinosaur in the main city.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely not as good as the first film, but I also have to say, the Lost World, the book, isn't as good as the first book either.
Yeah, I never read the second book, just the first one.
At least it's
Well,
not
the problem
Jurassic Park 3.
The problem with the books is that, spoiler alert, this is a huge difference between the book and the movie. In the book, in the first book, Ian Malcolm's supposed to be dead at the end, and the only reason that they retconned that in the second book is because they knew they were going to bring back Jeff Goldblum for the movie. In fact, in the book, what's his name? The hunter, the gamekeeper, lives.
Mm-hmm.
Muldoon lives, and Malcolm dies, so they switch that up. And Hammond dies in the book as well. He's also he's a mean character in the book, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
He's not very sympathetic.
Well, I think that also goes with the performances. I think people really like Richard Attenborough so much that they wrote it to where he stays alive at the end. And I think even he was upset because he's like, "Oh, I wanted to die in this movie," but they're like, "No, we're going to keep you alive for sequel potentials."
Oh, Jurassic Park.
Good choice with Jurassic Park. I 100% agree.
And you're so right about the book. The book is dense as heck. It's not like bad dense, but it is like if you're going in expecting it to be like as fast paced as the film, it's not even close.
It's more like science class with some dinosaur action.
I
even tried listening to an audiobook, and it's still even hard through an audiobook because it's like it's so slow paced at times. Even the opening where it's just like some guy obviously got attacked by a velociraptor, and so Doctor's trying to handle it's like all calm, like, what? Huh? Who?
It's actually it's very similar in that respect to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where Disney had this great fun action adventure fantasy film, and the book. I love the book. It's one of my favorite books ever written. But there are chapters where they just keep listing off the scientific names of different fish. So, and I don't know what they all mean because they're Latin. Travis, what is your next film?
So this one's technically a remake, but at the same time, I can guarantee like 99.9% of people don't even know it's a remake. So I'm still going to count it since it is still an adaptation of a book. I'm going to say The Wizard of Oz, the original Judy Garland film.
Oh, you're right.
Because there was a silent film version of The Wizard of Oz before it where like they would move their lips and then a black screen with the text and all that. So
I would actually argue that you're in the right here, and that is an adaptation and not a remake.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that any film that's based on a book is an adaptation, not a remake of the previous film. Yeah. Otherwise, because I you make the same argument with like Pride and Prejudice or Emma, which have both been made like God knows how many times at this point, and none of them is really a remake of an old. Yeah. So yeah, continue. Yes, you're in the right. It's an adaptation.
Yeah. obviously, I think what helps set it up or sets it apart from the book is like, first of all, everybody has watched it as a kid, even before they start reading books. So it's their usually most people's introduction to the franchise, and it still holds up, even like was it 80, 90 years old? Hey, we got a film that's older than 30 years old. Just got so many memorable performances from Judy Garland and everybody else, from the Wicked Witch, the Lion, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man. It's like everything's just so charming and such beautiful palettes and colors, and like you just watch it. It's one of those films where it's like you can't just sit down and watch a scene on YouTube or whatever, because then you're gonna watch the whole movie. There's just something that always draws you back to it, and just a sense of wonder and charm. It's just like it's hard to beat.
And I'd say another groundbreaking film, less in terms of special effects. Well, there's some cool ones, but more in terms of what they did with color.
Yes.
So very few films were in color back in, I believe it was 1939 when Wizard of Oz. It was either 39, 40, or 41.
I think it was
late
39.
30s, early 40s film.
I think it was 39.
Either way, not a lot of color films. And for them to go from black and white to color was absolutely striking. And two, actually, this kind of draws a great comparison to Roger Rabbit. The Wizard of Oz is a series of books. There are I think there are almost 10 of them. And no one really knows that there are more than one, maybe two, because, for the handful of us who know about Return to Oz. And it's also different from the books because, the movie's a musical. It's sort of a musical. It's got a lot of musical elements to it. The book is dark as heck.
Oh yeah.
Return to Oz, the movie really nailed more of the tone of the books.
Yeah, the books are dark.
They're creepy as heck.
But that also I think brings up a point that why I think like it shows how much of an impact the film has had. Is just like nowadays is like nobody has ever dared to remake The Wizard of Oz because it's so iconic. Every time they make a Wizard of Oz thing, it's always a prequel, like Oz the Great and Powerful, or a sequel like Return to Oz, or that animated Legend of Oz movie or whatever. But nobody's ever dared to even touch it as a remake, because I think like that shows like how iconic it's become. Like nobody wants it.
Well, and when Return to Oz came out, it bombed at the box office because audiences were expecting another Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and instead they got, this is what the books are like. No, I don't want this. I want my happy Judy Garland and my slightly less terrifying Wicked Witch, which is less terrifying compared to everything in Return to Oz. Oof, I forgot there was a silent version of The Wizard of Oz. But yeah, you're right, it's not the first time they've made it. But it is it's the one that everyone remembers.
It is. Because like again, like so much of it is it gets ingrained into your mind just because like the film is just so well made, even though it was like from what I hear like a terrible experience behind the scenes for a lot of the actors.
And I imagine that black and white silent version probably lost to time, right? Does it exist anywhere? Maybe on YouTube?
Maybe on YouTube, I think you can find clips of it or something, but I don't know if like a full version of it might exist. I never looked for it.
That's the unfortunate tragedy of most silent films is that most of them are tragically lost to time. A handful of them, like Universal's original Phantom of the Opera and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, thankfully have survived. The 1910 Thomas Edison version of Frankenstein exists, but it's only like a 10-minute film showing the creation of the monster. So yeah, like a lot of stuff from pre-1930s is just gone, and that sucks. Film preservation, unfortunately, was not a thing. But thankfully, we still have The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. So it seems like there's like a 13-minute video on YouTube. I don't know if that's the whole thing or what, but it looks like there's a 13 minutes of the film on YouTube.
I'll have to check it out. It could be there were some silent films that only ran, 10 to 13 minutes. So it could be. It could also just be a piece of what exists.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's somewhere on YouTube. That's good. I hope that someone out there with the skills to preserve it has done so.
Exactly.
All right. I'm going to move on to my last pick, and my last pick is actually a series of films. I'm sure you both know that these are based on novels, but let's be real here. What the second you say James Bond, the first thing people think is going to be the movies.
I did not know they were books.
Yep.
I didn't know they were books. My dad also really likes those books.
All the films up through from Dr. No in 1962 through The Living Daylights in 1987 all take their titles from either one of the books or short stories. And then we had a long period where they had run out of titles. And then we got Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and those are the last two to take their titles from books. Now, what's interesting about the Bond series as an adaptation of the books is some are very faithful, some are not even close. And obviously you've got that period where you have, from License to Kill to Die Another Day with Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan, where they're not at all taken from the books. But you've got like Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, surprisingly, is a very faithful adaptation of the book, with the exception of about the first 40 minutes of that film where Bond goes to Nassau in the Bahamas. That's not from the book. The book basically starts at the casino, and then they just kind of fill you in on what his assignment is. And obviously they change up a few more things to modernize it because the book was written in 1954. But yes, even that diabolical torture chair is from the book. And it sounds just as painful in the book as in the movie. But why have the movies eclipsed the books? It all starts with Sean Connery and every actor who has taken on the role. Sean Connery was so popular in the role that by the time we got to You Only Live Twice, you can literally see. Is it spelled forwards for you? Because it's backwards in my.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
The poster literally says
correct.
Sean Connery is James Bond. That's how they got the audiences in. Sean Connery is James Bond. Roger Moore is James Bond. And even though Bond is bigger than the actors who've played them, obviously, otherwise we would have had Sean Connery playing him for life. But they were also they were the films that for years defined the action genre and really pushed the boundaries. We look at them now and we think some of them are rather quaint, because these days you have James Bond, but you also have the Fast and the Furious pushing the boundaries for what's possible in a action film with cars, or you have big competing franchises like Jason Bourne or Mission Impossible. But yeah, back then it was Bond. And again, there were some films that were very faithful. Casino Royale is one of them. Most of the early Connery films were faithful. By the time you get to You Only Live Twice, you're obviously getting a little bit bigger, because the books are fairly well grounded in Cold War, spy stories. So, in this poster, you can see the very famous, evil villain volcano lair, which, is something so ridiculous that they used it in Austin Powers. But, that's at that point you can say, okay, we're definitely drifting away from what they were doing in the books. Or then you have The Spy Who Loved Me, which is an incredibly fun movie. But Bond author Ian Fleming specifically said at the time when the deal was made to acquire the rights to these stories, please do not adapt this book. It is terrible. And Bond doesn't even show up until over halfway. You can take the title, And so that's what they did. And they took the title. And the only other thing they did was they took the description of a character in the book and used it to create the one of the greatest henchmen of all time, Jaws. Just this massive 7-foot hulking monster. And then they gave him metal teeth and called him Jaws because it was 1977. And of course, the movie Jaws had been very popular 2 years earlier. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna go ahead.
I think it's like with a lot of these films, it's like Jaws too. Is like the music also helps really cement. It gives you that spy feeling. It's like when you hear it, you definitely get a James Bond. Like no matter what you hear it and you just think like man in a tuxedo with a pistol, just like dun, 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 or however the theme goes. I don't know it off the top of my head. And plus, like you said, like all the actors' performance. And I think another thing that helps is like each James Bond film, I feel like helps capture like the time period that they're in. So it's just like, because like looking at a film, sometimes you can go like, oh yeah, this was made in the 80s, this was made in the 90s or whatever. And you could tell like how it's persisted. Blah. Whereas a lot of franchises that are usually set in certain time periods or whatever, it's just like, no, this one's just like, any generation can find their version of James Bond, and that's why it sticks around.
You talked about the music, and yeah, that's one thing that the Bond theme song is also like Jaws, recognizable around the world. But another thing that the Bond series has done to distinguish itself from the books is, every Bond film, and this is just something it did as a series that I think other series have done. It always opens with, well, not always, but almost always opens with the little clip of, the gun barrel shot and Bond turning and firing with the blood dripping down the screen. It's like almost all the Bond movies open that way. They almost always have an opening title sequence before they do the credits. And they're one of the few series that still do opening credits. No one does that anymore. And they started the trend of which the Marvel movies do now, and I love it. They at the end of the credits they'll always say James Bond will return. And back when they still had book titles to take from, they would say like the end of Goldfinger, but James Bond will return in Thunderball. And I love that they do that now. Like at the end of the first Thor, they say Thor will return in the Avengers. It's like cool. And it's not quite the same, but having a stinger at the end of the movie is kind of fun and a similar way to put the opening sequence at the beginning of the film with Bond. And you know what? You are right, Travis. You can definitely watch a Bond movie and tell what era it's in. The only one I would say felt out of place is Die Another Day in 2002, because it came out a year after The Bourne Identity, and The Bourne Identity was that film that really sort of said this is what a post 9/11 spy movie should feel like. And Die Another Day was just like, okay, we're just going to take the classic Bond formula and put it into maximum overdrive with a terrible script. And then they completely rebooted everything with Casino Royale. And it's like, yes, Casino Royale is the post 9/11 Bond that we needed so very badly. And it's actually, it was also the first book, and it was how many years was that? Between 44 years after Dr. No, they finally made Casino Royale. Because what happened was Bond author Ian Fleming sold the rights to Casino Royale as a standalone book, like right away, and then sold the rights to the rest of his novels later. So the rights to Casino Royale were just all over the place, which is why there are actually three different versions of it that exist, and only one that is, of course, considered canon, and only one that is actually good. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride to get to Casino Royale, which I think we can also all agree is one of the best Bond movies ever made. I've talked so much about James Bond. It's time to move on. But James Bond, everyone, they were books. Believe it or not, they were books.
Definite.
Oh, and they're still books. Arthur Ian Fleming died back in 1964, but starting in the 80s, like they've just had authors, writing Bond books. They still do it. No one knows they exist though, because no one cares, honestly. But yeah, they're still making books. But enough about Bond. Sarah, what have you got?
For my third one, I think I am going to go with The Princess Bride, which probably most people at this point know was a book. But I would say probably far more people have seen the movie than have read the book. Although I would say that book was like the person that wrote it also wrote the screenplay for the movie, and he was like first and foremost a screenwriter, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that book and movie are pretty similar. It's a very, very faithful adaptation of the book, I would say. So really, it's kind of like you don't really need to read the book if you've seen the movie, because it's like pretty exactly the same. I mean, it's small changes here and there, but it's pretty similar compared to like most book to movie. But I've read the book and it's fun, but it's just not the movie. Like, and that's definitely one where it's all about the actors. The actors make that movie. Like, they're all having like so much fun.
Oh yeah, like I think for a lot of people out there, it's going to be like possibly their first exposure to Wallace Shawn, who is incredible in that film. Oh gosh, I can't remember the names of any of the actors in that film, but they're all incredible.
Andre the
Giant, was Robin Wright, Chris Sarandon, Christopher Guest. Mandy Patinkin, Andre the Giant, of course.
Yep.
Billy Crystal and Carol Kane.
Yeah. It's just a fun movie.
And then Fred Savage and Peter Falk doing the bookends.
I think the bookends is what also helps really cements it. It's just like I personally love stories within stories, and just seeing like the reactions to it was just always so much fun. But I definitely agree. I think the performances are what helps sets it apart. Like they had so many comedic geniuses and legends as the cast, and so like just seeing them interact and all that. And even for people like Andre the Giant, is just like pro wrestler, and he did a phenomenal job and had such really good comedic timing. I look at his performance the same way I look at Dave Bautista in Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like they had a similar style. But
and even the bookends are really straight from the book, because in the book there's like kind of a whole setup where he talks about like it being this classic by S. Morgenstern, but his grandpa would read it to him and leave out all the boring parts. So later, when he was a grown-up and went to read the book, he was like, what is all this like boring descriptions of the land? Like, where is all the and then he figured out that he'd like just read him like the exciting parts. Yeah. So he's like, so this is my version of the exciting parts.
What was I going to say? There's something about that film that I felt like really helped set. Because I think the book was written to be a parody of like all this cheesy like romance novels and all that, or whatever that you would find at like the store that your aunt or grandma would buy, and just all that. And I think the film having actors like really helped push that idea, which I think helped. What's actually funny is like I saw there's a YouTube channel that does this thing called Honest Trailers, where they just comment on a lot of things, and one of my favorites was A Princess Bride, when they're just like, all right, just imagine the whole movie, but it's narrated by the guy who does the bookends. Just like all the lines. You know what I'm saying? It's like imagine the grandpa being all like, oh yeah, sure, the entire time, as opposed to hearing the actors. That would have also been I would love if there was like a version out there where they did record that just for fun.
Honest Trailers are great.
Oh yeah, with Peter Falk just doing impressions through the whole movie, and Yeah, that'd be cute.
Like just like a movie where it's just like it's him reading the stories, but it's just him doing all the character voices.
Oh my gosh, we've picked some really good
Top-notch
movies
choice.
tonight. Yeah, yeah. Travis, deliver us your final top-notch choice.
Well, mine is also going to be a series of movies, and it's really hard to pick just one, but I do feel like they all totally fit into the whole. They eclipse their original book source materials, and I'm going to say pretty much every film Disney has ever made. Because like very few films in Disney's catalog are actually original stories. Like almost everything from The Lion King to Frozen to Cinderella to Tarzan, almost everything is an adaptation of a book. Because Disney knew what he was doing, and he only told stories of public domain stories. That's how he really like capitalized on the brand name, but still didn't have to spend that much money.
Yeah, I mean, how long was it before? I'm trying to think, like, what's the earliest original film that Disney made? And I'm thinking also just outside the realm of animation, because they did do a lot of live. Maybe like, I mean, they had stuff like The Parent Trap in the '60s, or That Darn Cat, which those are probably original Disney films. But as far as the animation stuff is going, yeah, you're totally right.
Like even their first ever full-length film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, an adaptation, is just like, I think that's also why they probably brought on Pixar, so they can have some more original stuff, honestly. Like, because Pixar is the closest thing I can think to modern Disney that tells original stories. Although Disney has done a lot better. Like Wreck-It Ralph, I felt like was pretty original and all that. But like for the most part, when you think of Disney films, you think of like Pinocchio and all of those other classic stories, but they're all adaptations. And I think the reason why they eclipse their originals because like we're all introducing them as kids. It's just like our parents will sit us down in front of a TV and put on a little Disney movie with a juice box and some cookies or whatever, and we just watch the movies. And even though like most of them are not really the most accurate, they obviously will take out most of the dark themes of their source materials, like Hercules, like or whatever, and make them more child friendly. But again, like that's also why they eclipse. It's like you watch Disney films as a kid and they stick with you your whole life.
Oh yeah. For the record, everyone, for all you out there watching who are maybe new to the show, go back a couple episodes to December. We've got a great episode that's all about Disney. Check that out. You're right, Travis. They are much more kid friendly. I can't speak to all of them, but I did read. I read Hunchback of Notre Dame, and that book is thoroughly depressing. Thoroughly. So if you saw the Disney version, that's your first exposure, and you're thinking the book's going to be a jolly good time, don't read the book. It's so sad. In fact, I think even every other cinematic version is also just extremely sad.
And like even like stories that a lot of the stories are like just children fables people would tell. Like even Cinderella would be like in the original books and all that. I think it was the stepsisters cut off their toes to try to fit into the slippers and stuff like that. So yeah, like a lot of the materials are dark, but like the fact that they made them children friendly is like why they stick with us. Is like remember the happy, cheery, dancing cartoon characters.
Well, a lot of them are based on fairy tales that are, like 3 pages long. So they've fleshed out the characters a lot more and, gave them personalities. And
that is true.
And for the record out there, for those of you who know me and have listened to some of my ramblings on this show, I did actually watch Disney movies when I was a kid in between the monster movies and the James Bond stuff. There were a handful of films that my dad exposed me to that were actually appropriate for that age. So yeah, I my first exposure to fairy tales and whatnot was basically through Disney. So that is why that's why I remember all those stories mostly as Disney as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, too bad Disney didn't do a children's version of Psycho.
Oof.
Trying to think if I could make a funny joke comparison. Like, is there any Disney film close to Psycho? And I'm like, no. Even though, like, almost every
There are
Disney
some
character.
fairy tales that are close to Psycho, though.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, like,
go ahead.
I'm just making a joke, like, well, there are so many Disney films where the characters are in drag and will dress up as women, like in Psycho, but that's...
And I talked about their live action films. They did have a few more original live action films, but again, they did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They did Robin Hood. They did Treasure Island. They did Kidnapped. They adapted a lot of classic stories, and I think the live action films were generally relegated more to sort of folklore stories and adventure stories as opposed to fairy tales and magic. And stuff that I think adults would appreciate more. Because again, stuff like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is very science heavy. But hey, I mean, heck, they did a live action and animated versions of Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
So, they've done live action and animated versions of The Jungle Book. And I'm talking about before the new version of The Jungle Book. They did it in the 90s. I remember it. It was fun. Disney. We've talked about a bunch of movies that we feel have eclipsed their source material, in general. But now I want to talk about just, and this is just an open discussion, because one of the ones I feel like we've all seen for sure. Adaptations that are, have that same level of awareness or popularity as their source material. The first one I want to bring up, and again, you didn't need to bring a list for this one. This is an open conversation, but I think people are very aware that Lord of the Rings is a book or trilogy of books, depending on how you buy them, because they were around as books for so long before they got the live action adaptation that they deserve. Yes, The Hobbit had been adapted as an animated film, and it was a very good animated film. There was an attempt to adapt The Lord of the Rings into a sort of weird live action animated hybrid in the 70s by Ralph Bakshi, and boy, is it weird. And it only covers like everything up through, I think, the Battle of Helm's Deep. But it is weird. It's some weird stuff. But I do think that most people are very much aware that Lord of the Rings is also a trilogy of books, and are, because for one thing, and this has persisted for 20 years, there are stupid arguments about it online over which is better, the film movies or the books, and it's really annoying. I love the books and I love the movies. I can't stand purists who are just like, oh, the movies are bad because they didn't have everything.
No Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, there are things I wish they had. Like, I wish they had the Scouring of the Shire. It'd be nice if they had that, but like, I don't think that ruins the experience of the Lord of the Rings for me as a film. So
I feel like those are great movies to watch, and if you really want to know more about that world, like, go read the books, and you can read a whole bunch of other histories too, like, if you want.
Yeah.
And you learn all kinds of crazy stuff about that world, so it's kind of fun. Like, if you're really into that world building, you can learn a lot more.
Yeah, I totally have to agree with Sarah on this. Is like, I think the reason why the books and the movies are on equal terms is because, like, it is a fantasy like adventure that builds its own universe and lore and all that. It's I kind of look at it like Star Wars. It's just like, yes, we have the movies, but there's always so many books and other side things that can help build upon and make you look at the original thing differently. Like, I've actually not read any of the Lord of the Rings books, and I'm actually currently watching the Lord of the Rings movies for the first time. Don't attack me, people. I'm sorry. No, I'm joking.
Thank God.
But it's just like, I'm sure like it'd be one of those cases where it's just like, if you read the books, I'm sure like they can help expand upon certain scenes in the movies and stuff like that. At least I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I think, because like a lot of the stuff we've talked about before is just, and this is like the reason why Jurassic Park or Who Framed Roger Rabbit is just like, it's not really world building and all that, and it's just like they're more just like standalone type stories, where it's just like Lord of the Rings again, like it's adventure, it's like fantasy. You can come up with so much stuff that, at least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, and just I can't think of a trilogy of books that is as well known or as beloved as the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of movie trilogies out there that we can debate over which one is the best, and usually it's going to come down to Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings. But like Lord of the Rings doesn't have, as a trilogy, doesn't really have
mm-hmm.
that same competition in the book world.
I mean, Lord of the Rings also spawned a lot of other book series that I feel like are similar, to where they are on the same leagues as their books, because like there was that time where like everybody was trying to be the next Harry Potter, the next whatever's, we had Harry Potter, the Hunger Games, Twilight, so many like franchises where it's just like we know their movies and we know their books. I think Lord of the Rings was one of the first big major ones that started the trend, because it was like some of the biggest films in the time. Like, wasn't the first one become the highest grossing film of all time at that time, or am I wrong?
No. I don't remember if Fellowship of the Ring became the highest grossing film of all time when it came out. No, it didn't, because Titanic held it for so many years. Yeah.
Well,
I think Return of the King was the first movie to beat Titanic. I think. I could be wrong though.
No, I think it was Titanic is still like the third highest grossing movie behind Avatar and Avengers Endgame at this time.
That's right. It took Avatar to beat Titanic. Sorry, I'm not a fan of Avatar.
Neither am I. I'm just like, when they release Avatar and beat Endgame, I'm just like, come on, just let Endgame have it.
Don't worry, Marvel will re-release Endgame at one point, or it'll be Avengers 5. They'll do it that way. You brought up Harry Potter. I actually have Harry Potter on the list as well, because I think that's another series of books and movies that people fight over. Like, oh, the movies aren't like the books, and it's like everyone's aware of both things. And Harry Potter actually was the first one to come out before Fellowship of the Ring by about a month. Oh, yeah. Oh. They were the same year, but they were a month apart.
It was just the first one was so very like kid friendly, I think. Like, so the first two Harry Potter movies are very, I don't know if it's just the way Chris Columbus directed them, but they're very, very much children's movies. I think they clearly got darker as they went along, as the books do, but I feel like the first couple movies were a little more under the radar.
Well, from what I hear, like, I wouldn't be surprised about that too, because I have seen the first like 4 or 5 Harry Potters, but I kind of fell out of it. It's not my franchise. I want to finish it. But I even heard that the initial plan was for Steven Spielberg to make like an animated single Harry Potter movie. And then it was Chris Columbus, I believe, who was like, no, we should make each film a live action film, or each book a live action film. I could be wrong on that. I don't know my Harry Potter lore and history.
I know they did start the splitting the last book into 2 movies, so we could get one more movie in the franchise, which
I think
kind of made sense for Harry Potter because those books are so big, but they were like splitting Mockingjay, which is like only a 350-page book.
And then Breaking Dawn.
And I actually really love The Hunger Games, but I thought it was ridiculous they split that book into 2 movies.
Even Avengers Infinity War was supposed to be a part 1 and part 2, but then they're like, no, we're going to make it Avengers Infinity War and Endgame to separate them.
I love that you brought up, like, everyone sort of tried after Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and a lot failed. Like, you had Percy Jackson, didn't make it past, 2 movies. Aragon bombed. Everyone tried to find the next big fantasy thing. And I think The Hunger Games is the only one that actually made, well, no, Twilight made it all the way, but
we don't want to be Twilight. The Hunger Games are pretty well done.
The Hunger Games is like sort of the only one that's Go ahead.
Even to this day, they're still trying to like turn book franchise into a major like film and TV show franchise at this point. There's still many people trying it.
They've definitely moved on more to
um,
TV shows, I feel like, with book series, because then they get a lot more. I mean, they just get a lot more episode, a lot more runtime to put all the little nuances of the books in there. I mean, I would say probably it's funny, all those things vied for like the next Lord of the Rings, but I would probably argue that the next thing that really took that mantle was Game of Thrones, even though it's clearly not family. But
yeah. Well, yeah, because Game of Thrones, you're right. And imagine if Game of Thrones had been a series of films instead of a TV series. It would be, the world building would have been so much, more difficult because you have too many characters to follow. And I realize you've got a lot of characters in Lord of the Rings to follow, but like, each individual character in Game of Thrones feels more important than, you don't need to have a lot about Legolas and Gimli. What they had for them was perfect for the movies. But like, if you were to shave off anyone's story in Game of Thrones to fit it into a movie, oh man, that'd be so rough. Because everyone's off doing their own thing, and there's so much story to tell with each character.
I mean, they definitely shaved off some characters here and there from the books, but
oh yeah,
those books, I mean, have so many viewpoints that are all important. So it was hard, I'm sure, to pick. And not even that they completely shaved them off, but there was definitely a lot of characters whose stories they simplified or shortened, or there was like a few characters that were kind of amalgamations of several different characters in the books. Just to try to simplify things. It was still pretty hard to simplify it. And then I think they just got so intricate that that's probably why at the end they're just like, we just have to finish it.
Well, George R.R. Martin was pretty hands-on with the project, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think probably to begin with. But, they really just, when they lost their source material, they just kind of seemed to flounder, unfortunately.
I think that's where a lot of the Lord of the Rings not Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. Why did I say Lord of the Rings? I think that's another reason why it succeeded. Is like, even though she's not a great person now, J.K. Rowling did have a huge involvement with those films, so they were very good adaptations. Well,
you say that, and some people are gonna be like, that Travis, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I know. There's some of the movie adaptations I like. Some of them I think are terrible. Yeah. Like the sixth one is terrible. Yeah. The last one did a pretty good job. The sixth one is terrible. The third one was good. Fourth and fifth, not much.
But the point is here, we're not going to fight over the fact that they didn't include everything in all of the movies that they had in the books.
But they're definitely equally popular. I would say they're definitely both equally popular.
Yeah.
Same with Game of Thrones, though I think it took that initial burst of popularity from the series for people to realize these are books too. But once they knew there were books, I think people really dug into those books. And then, of course, I think that awareness of the books continues partly because we're waiting.
We're never going to finish.
We're waiting on a series that's never going to end, and not in the way we like. We want a series that never ends because George R.R. Martin won't stop cranking them out. Not a series that never ends because
he never
wrote an ending for it.
It's really sad because it's a really good series, and it makes me sad that it will probably never be finished.
I've got a few more things I could talk about in this. Does anyone else, though, first have any particular films or TV shows or series that fit into this category where there's that same level of awareness as the books or whatnot?
I already brought it up, but I do want to bring it up in this category. Is like To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel like the book and the movie are pretty on equal terms because like they're both very controversial, and like many states have even banned both of them, and like a lot of schools that haven't banned them, it's just like we'll show you both and to compare the two, and like they both have the same amount, I feel, of like cultural significance. It's a pretty good adaptation of the book, the movie, and both, I think, really do the job that they're trying to do very well.
I specifically remember in high school having to read it, and then we watched the movie. So absolutely get that. And I would say that I would say to some degree with most adaptations, the same can be said of Shakespeare, because of the name. Obviously, you can't just watch a cinematic adaptation of Shakespeare, and then not be aware that it's a play.
Yeah.
Unless they're being subtle about it, like it's always fun to be surprised when someone finds out 10 Things I Hate About You is Taming of the Shrew, or that She's the Man is Twelfth Night. It's
Lion King is Hamlet.
Yeah, Shakespeare is fun that way.
Actually, I think, sorry, one of my favorites is like from another franchise, Planet of the Apes. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I noticed, is basically Julius Caesar, and the fact that the main character is called Caesar really helps highlight that.
Yeah, and that's actually, and Caesar is, of course, is a character from the original films, and very similar storyline. They just told it a lot better in the remakes.
Yeah.
In the newer trilogy.
Well, you were like the fourth film.
Yeah, the Planet of the Apes films, the 4 films that were made after it, just are varying degrees of good. And when I say that, I mean some are good and some are real bad. But the new trilogy, pretty rock solid all around.
Yeah, in the new trilogy, I think they adapted the last 3 films in the franchise or so. Like, they decided, all right, we're going to take bad films with potential and do something good with them, which I respect.
2 books that I think will continue to have awareness of books and movies for all time are Dracula and Frankenstein, because they just don't stop adapting those. I do think, however, there's a certain level of awareness. While I think an equally strong awareness of the books and the movies, I think there's a ridiculous awareness and misconception that the Frankenstein monster has a flat head and bolts sticking out of its neck, because that film was so successful in 1931 and that makeup is so iconic. I do think that is going to remain the general perception of what the Frankenstein monster looks like, even though it's not even close to the description of the creature in the book. And same with Dracula. I think everyone is always going to perceive Dracula as, having that Bela Lugosi voice, with the crow's peak hair. That's just sort of the performance that's always going to be what people think of. And again, even though that's not, really what the book is terribly like, I think the Gary Oldman version is the closest we've gotten to a book accurate. But because Bela Lugosi's version has been parodied or imitated so many times over the last 100 years, it's just the version that I think most people are going to associate Dracula with. So I think those are 2 examples where the books may have a slightly more awareness of the movies, but that's only because there's so many movies that they kind of drown themselves out over time, with the exception of those few, those like 3 or 4 that really stand out.
Yeah. I would also add, I think another one where the books are always kind of going to be on equal footing with the movie adaptations are like Stephen King's books in general, because he's so well known and so famous. And there's a lot of argument and flack about which movie adaptations are horrible and which ones are good, but I feel like people are always going to be aware that a Stephen King is like, there's a book, there's a movie.
It helps too, like from what I can tell, like, don't they always advertise the movies as like Stephen King's It? Like, his name is almost always attached right to it.
Quite often.
And I think it's funny, they don't do this with classic books, but you also have, like, again, I mentioned Pride and Prejudice, I think, and Emma earlier, and like those are ones that I think people will always know as books as well as movies, because again, like Dracula and Frankenstein, they're adapted all the time. And those are also books that are drilled into us in high school. Yeah. Like Treasure Island.
There are two other ones that actually just came to my mind. When you talked about Dracula, for some reason, the Goosebumps books popped into my head. Because, like, there's a Goosebumps TV show that pretty much adapts every book into its own episode. And, like, they're cheesy, fun. They're, like, kids' horror. And I think, like, they're on the same level. They're not trying to be anything too serious since they're made for kids.
I didn't know there was a TV show. I only knew there were the 2 movies.
Yeah, I think there was a TV show because, like, almost every Goosebumps book has been adapted, and there's a couple that weren't, and I think they made jokes about that in the Goosebumps movie with Jack Black. They referenced a couple of the books that never got adaptations. So that was
the
fun.
series was like from the 90s, I think.
Yeah. But then I just thought of like another book that is like probably the most famous book of them all, and like every time there's a movie based on one of its stories, like even like religious books like the Bible, it's just like there's when you see like the 10 Commandments or whatever, like you know them both equally because like they're just famous stories.
Oh, I wish I still had my Goosebumps books now. Oh.
Yeah, I think what's funny is we mentioned Stephen King and who's R.L. Stein and him are often compared in like different capacities. They even reference Stephen King in the new Goosebumps with Jack Black.
Can anyone else think of another author whose name is just as well associated with their movies as their books, like Stephen King, like who gets their name like literally plastered on the poster? I'm trying to think. Because like obviously the Harry Potter movies weren't presented as J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or J.R.R. Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring.
Well, I know the Gary Oldman version of Dracula did advertise itself as Bram Stoker's Dracula, even though he had no involvement because he was dead at that point.
Oh, very dead.
I feel like maybe Neil Gaiman is getting there. I feel like people are pretty aware of his movies or books, especially because I know they're working on adapting Sandman. So,
and Travis, to your point about Bram Stoker's Dracula, I think they probably did that because they wanted their audience to go in thinking this is going to be about as close to a good a close adaptation as they were ever going to get, because again, like none of the Dracula movies before then were really that close.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein a few years later, even though that one definitely deviates from the book by the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, what authors? I can't think of any. Stephen King is just the best.
Yeah.
I think it's about time to start wrapping up and giving out some final thoughts. So I'll open up here. We are in an era where we constantly hear people on the internet complaining about this isn't original. I want original stories. Don't ever count out a good adaptation, because for one thing, you may say you want original storylines, but man, oh man, those Lord of the Rings and those Harry Potter films, they bring in a lot of money, even if they are bad, and they are The Hobbit, which was not supposed to be 3 movies.
I was just taking the splitting. I think that was just taking the splitting a book into 2 movies like way too far.
Yeah.
They're getting to 3 movies.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but don't ever count out a good adaptation, because for one thing, sometimes you're going to go into a movie and you're going to watch it and you're going to love it, and at the end of the movie you're going to see it in the credits and you're going to be like, that's a book. Neat. I should read that book. Or you're going to realize that it's Shakespeare and maybe you should read that Shakespeare play. Don't ever count out adaptations, because sometimes the best story is the one that is retold.
Mm-hmm.
Travis, what say you? Final thoughts.
I definitely agree with you. Like, never rule out like finding out something's an adaptation, because like I can't. There's a quote I heard from a online personality. I can't remember the exact quote or the numbers, but basically it was that there are 5 stories in all of existence and like 7 characters or some variation of that. Every story ever told, even original movies, like the story's probably been done before. You love A Bug's Life? Well, guess what? It's the Three Amigos in a different form. And so, while yes, like um, I do agree. Like there are some bad remakes out there. I still don't forgive the Hellboy reboot or Leprechaun Origins, but I never say rule them out because like a lot of times they can improve upon the original and or even introduce you to something you didn't even know existed, and then now you have a whole new place to go. So I definitely appreciate adaptations as much as I do original because that's how we keep telling new stories by like revisiting what has come before.
And honestly, a good adaptation, even if it's still presenting a story in the time that it was originally written. One day it was on when we talked about adaptations before. She talked a lot about Little Women. Like the new Little Women obviously takes that story in that same setting, but tells it in a modern sense and makes it accessible for modern audiences. So, yeah, never rule out an adaptation. Sarah, bring us home.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of watching. I mean, I love books and I'm a big fan of watching the movie versions. It's always kind of fun to see if they get it right or if they completely miss the mark. It's been nice that they've been getting more right lately. But I would argue that probably a lot of the, movies people think are original, like probably a good handful of them are adapted from, a book nobody knew about or a play nobody knew about. So I think even a lot of the original things were probably kind of adapted from something. So, and I definitely feel like I prefer adaptations to remakes.
And there are going to be stories that are adaptations, but they won't necessarily sort of credit themselves as adaptations per se. Like A Bug's Life, it doesn't really say it's an adaptation, but I look at A Bug's Life and it's like, oh, it's the story of the Seven Samurai. It's just a new version of that.
It's like we brought up earlier. It's just like all of the modern stories that are just Shakespeare. Like we talked about, like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, 10 Things I Hate About You. All this is just like, it's like I said, like there are only like so many stories that are just told differently, but it's how they present them that makes them feel new and original.
Well, that brings us to trivia time. So, Travis, I have some bad news for you. You were tied with Jalen when you last were on the show. Jalen showed up last week and did his thing because he's the trivia master this year. He's 3 for 3, so he's one ahead of you now. So tonight is your chance to catch up and tie for the lead. Sarah, tonight is your chance to add another point, get ahead of Gary. Because everyone's struggling this year. I think I may be going a little bit hard on the questions. But tonight's trivia is about adaptations. So I'm going to ask, which of the following films is not an adaptation? And again, I mean this in the strictest sense of the word. You might see it as an adaptation, but it's not credited as such. Is it A, Silver Linings Playbook, B, The Descendants, C, The Hurt Locker, or D, Jojo Rabbit?
Can I get that repeated?
Absolutely. A, Silver Linings Playbook, B, The Descendants, C, The Hurt Locker, or D, Jojo Rabbit?
I kind of want to say Descendants because I do feel like the others are like direct adaptations of books, whereas Descendants more like oh, these characters are our own ideas based off of something else, but not like in a direct adaptation. Like there's been no like Descendants book or TV show that has come before. So I want to say Descendants.
Are you talking about the Descendants TV show or the movie The Descendants?
I'm talking about the movie with George Clooney.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like Disney's Descendants. With,
No. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's the 2011 film starring George Clooney.
Yeah, no, I was just like, that's like one of those multiple choice questions where one sticks out so much, I have to go with that one. Silver Linings Playbook, The Descendants, Jojo Rabbit, and what was the other one?
The Hurt Locker.
The Hurt Locker.
I think I'm gonna go with C, The Hurt Locker.
I'm gonna go with The Hurt Locker too.
Well, I have some news for both of you. You're both right.
Yay.
So Travis, welcome.
First two were like, if you meant the movie, I knew the first two were. I was not quite sure about the last two. That was a guess between the last two.
I know, because Jojo Rabbit feels like such a Taika Waititi film. Like it feels like something that would spring right out of his brain, but it didn't.
I need to watch.
I'm sure he added plenty. You haven't seen it?
No, I haven't. I need to put it on the list.
Sarah, you need to watch that, and you need to watch it before Jaws and North by Northwest.
Okay.
Only because it's more relevant now.
Okay, I need to ask more clarifying questions, because first I thought Descendants was talking about the Disney Descendants, and then I mixed up Jojo Rabbit with that one. Was it Peter Rabbit? That one where the rabbits. The one with James Gordon, whatever.
I know what you're talking about. Nope, Jojo Rabbit is the Taika Waititi film with Hitler. It's so good.
I love Taika Waititi's everything, so I definitely want to see it.
Name's cool.
Do it. The good news is, confused as you may have been, you both got them right. So, Travis, you are tied for the lead with Jalen. Sarah, you pick up one, and that puts you in
Sorry, Gary.
second place. Apologies to everyone else who has been struggling with trivia this year. I've been a jerk. We'll see about making it a little bit easier, just so we can have some healthy competition.
Last year.
We'll see. All right, that is the Sunday matinee for it's Sunday, May the 2nd, and if you're watching this now, it is Monday, May the 3rd. I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope you have a good week. So you can find us at facebook.com/truthinfilm, on Twitter at Sunday_matinee. There's the blog, truthinfilm.wordpress.com. And please like, subscribe, tell your friends, make us popular or something. I don't know. Sarah, Travis, thank you for joining me on this fun little episode. It is always a pleasure to chat with you about movies. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and have a good day.